Welcome everyone. My name is Pam Miller. I work at the Toronto District School Board, and again, a big warm welcome to you. I can't say it enough. If that the fact that you're spending time with us on Earth Day, it just warms my heart. Thank you as well for those that are putting in the chat where you're from and the territory that you're from. So miigwech on that one. I actually was hoping that I would learn a few Indigenous languages to say hello. Right now, I don't have very many, so I'll stick to my bonjour. And then, actually, how do I say it, Hilary?
I believe it's Anan. Yeah,
Anan, yeah.
I'm not a native speaker of the Anishinaabemowin, so
Right. Super. Okay, so we're all working on it. And so you are in this session in the theme City of a Classroom. We are looking at professional environmental learning, both in service, which is referring to teachers that are presently in whatever classroom or virtual they are, and the pre-service teacher education with myself and Hilary. I'm going to pass it over to Hilary to start us off with our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Pam. We acknowledge the traditional territory upon which the conference is being hosted. For many thousands of years, the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewan, the Haudenosaunee, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit have sought to walk gently on this land. This territory is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg and allied nations to peaceably care and share for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect. And it's only a starting point to remind us all to enact this work in our professional and personal lives.
Thank you, Hilary. And again, thank you for those that are putting their land in the chat. We have people from the Songhees and around Victoria, BC, people from Calgary and Treaty 7, Treaty 4 in Regina. I'm from the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm right at actually very close to the Mississauga River itself and in Mississauga. I'm going to be introducing, just to let you know again that we're here to talk about professional environmental learning. And I want to introduce my good friend and colleague, Hilary Inwood. We've known each other since high school, and of course that means we have lots of stories about each other, but I'm always inspired by Hilary. She is an artist. I probably is what I know her as first, as an artist. She's a mom. She's a wife. She is an educator, and an incredible one at that. She is a researcher at the University of Toronto through OISE. And she is a mover and shaker, because if you want something done, she gets it done. And the other part I love about her is that she's a forward thinker. So she is just incredible and someone I look up to all the time. And she loves to canoe. So she's invited me on a couple of the trips, which I've appreciated. Over to you, Hilary.
Wow, Pam, I don't think I've ever had such a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Pam Miller, who I've also known, surprisingly, since high school. We've had not only a very long friendship, but also a very long professional relationship. And that's been one of the great joys, honestly, of my life. It has always been so much fun to work with Pam, and I've always learned so much from her. She's currently in a slightly different role. I've known her most recently in the last 10 years or so as the instructional leader associated with the Toronto District School Board's Eco Schools program. And we've had really the good fortune to be working together over that time. But most recently, she's been redeployed to work with a grade 8 class virtually. And that's been quite a challenge this year, as it has been for many teachers. So she's learning firsthand what it's like to be in a digital classroom, for sure. But all of her work over the years has involved supporting youth and educators and K-12 Eco Schools teachers to take action on environmental issues and foster sustainable communities. And again, it's always a pleasure to present with Pam and to work alongside Pam.
Well, thank
Okay,
you.
well, with that in mind, I think we should get underway. We've got lots to cover tonight. So right now, what we'd like to do is just give you a brief overview of what you can expect. We've done the introductions, and we appreciate you introducing yourself in the chat. Thank you. We're going to talk a little bit about what effective professional learning involves, and we'd like you engaged in that conversation. We'll tell you a little bit about the TDSB's Eco Schools program, about the work we've been doing in OISE, and about the collaboration. It's a very unique collaboration. We like to think it's a very innovative collaboration. You can tell us at the end whether that's the case. And tell you a little bit about that, some of the benefits, challenges, and successes we've had, and then a research study that we've conducted alongside it too. And along the way, we are going to ask you to become engaged with some inquiry questions of your own. So with that in mind, away we go. So our first question for you tonight is, we want you to think back to a time when you were engaged in high quality learning experience in environmental and sustainability education. And that we'll have you think about as an adult, because I think we've all had, well, hopefully you've all had really good experiences as a child. Ruth Chawla's research certainly has done some work in that area. But we're asking you to think about as an adult, a quality learning experience you've had, and what makes for effective professional learning in environmental and sustainability education. If you can pop that into the chat, that would be great. You're also welcome simply to unlock your microphone if you prefer to speak it rather than type it. Pam, can you think of a memory while people are typing in?
And that's a really good one. I think when I went to Teachers College, we were in a small cohort through York University. And unfortunately, of course, it was a year long, it was very compressed. But any time that we got to act as, I mean, not act like children, I'm pretty good at that, but to do the things as we would as a student, and then take a step back and reflect on why that would work, why that was successful, why we were engaged the way we were. So I like those two pieces. What about yourself?
Haley in the chat says that it's something that challenges a worldview or perspective of mine and seen in new ways, which I would agree with completely. Tracy talks about the utility of the experiences. It's something that you can put into play right away. Marie agrees with that, something that's practical and applicable. And Judy says something that has to be centered on identifying what we really care about and perhaps what keeps us up at night. As I get older, it seems like everything keeps me up at night, Judy. So, and Gigi says one that involves mentors who are leaders and who make you excited about doing environmental work, and leaders who make you feel like you're playing as you go, which is fantastic. Jennifer Barron, who is an accomplished leader of professional learning herself through EPFO, talks about professional learning collaboratives with a team at your school, and how all stakeholders get involved in that using an inquiry-based approach. And Jessie says having it modeled, right? It's having the learning modeled for you through physical hands-on engagement outdoors. We would have done that had we been in person tonight, but as we're not, we're going to try and engage you in conversation instead in this digital environment. Thank you very much for those responses. Please keep them going. Oh, Emily says that we recently had a guest speaker from the Royal Botanical Gardens take on a virtual tour, showed us environmental preservation methods and how to use environmental ed in the classroom, which is very useful for teacher candidates in the day.
Yeah, and very hard to do virtually. So those of you who may not know about the Eco Schools program, it's the one in Ontario started with the Toronto District School Board. Folks in our sustainability office adapted the program from the UK and built 6 sections to really approach greening and climate change, education and climate change mitigation and adaptation through a systems approach. And so there are 6 sections in the Eco Schools program that allow us again to engage students as leaders, but also to address climate change through a number of different things. They do require that teachers work within the school. It is an eco school, not an eco class, and it requires teachers, staff, caretakers, office assistants, principals to work together as one with their parents and community to make the changes. Initially, we had about 15 schools do the pilot in 2003. And over the years, we kept on growing. And then with a couple of labor actions, we've settled down at about the 350, 332 mark over the past couple of years. In Toronto, we have about 525 sites. So this is about 2/3 of our schools are participating in eco schools. In the beginning, though, one of our challenges was absolutely to look at the eco-literacy, because people were really good at doing the hands-on things, especially outside the classroom. So having an eco club and doing the waste audit, doing the gardening, doing the energy audits. But really, we found that there was a big gap in bringing it into the classroom. Hilary, if you could go to the next slide. So our department responded to make sure that the school board was walking the talk. So when students looked at what was happening around them, because we know there's both a hidden and visible curriculum in schools. So when, teachers come in riding a bike or carrying a mug, they're modeling. And so the sustainability office really tried to do that by providing supports to schools through different partnerships within the board, through the grounds department, and partnerships outside of the board, such as Evergreen or Food Share or CultureLink. And so these partnerships were able to help as a board reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we were emitting, as well as reduce the amount of waste that we were sending to the landfills. And yet at the same time, we didn't have supports in place to build teacher capacity. And so when, again, auditors would go into schools, they kind of noticed that even our strongest schools, it was always outside the classroom, not in the classroom, not teaching about the actions, not teaching about in the nature areas that were set up. Teachers felt we're at a loss. Over to you.
Thank you. So if Pam's challenge was around professional learning for eco schools teachers and how to do that with a really small eco schools team, one of our challenges at OISE was very much in parallel with that. Our challenge was really about how to provide effective pre-service professional learning for teacher candidates, for those training to be teachers, sometimes called pre-service teachers. And this has been something we've been working on since about 2008, when here in Ontario, the Ministry of Education launched a new policy framework called Acting Today, Shaping Tomorrow. At that point, that was our impetus to start to grow professional learning for our teacher candidates in environmental and sustainability ed in our program. It started really small, but it's grown over time. And so when we started doing some work with the TDSB, we already had a series of after school events. That's how we started doing extracurricular events to begin. We had just started to build it into core and elective courses at OISE as well. We actually are one of the few pre-service programs currently that has mandatory core components in environmental ed for our teacher candidates to complete before they can graduate. We were running an annual small, but an annual environmental and sustainability ed conference for our teacher candidates, along with an eco fair. And then more recently, we've been running a cohort that has a focus on social justice and eco-justice education. That's been in place for just about 5 years at this point in time. We were offering an environmental leadership award for our students, and also had begun to start to do some research projects and things together. And we had a website to help with the communication piece. So we had some pieces in place that were working. But what we were hearing very commonly from our students was, I'm going out to practicum and I'm not seeing it in action in my classroom, because it's really quite random whether or not you end up in an eco schools teacher's classroom to actually see this work modeled for you. So it's wonderful to get that background on campus, but what they really wanted to see was what it looked like in classrooms as well. Now, I will tell you that we've worked to enhance the environment at OISE to signal that sustainability is important in the building. We're in a very old building, which is not, frankly, very sustainable from a physical infrastructure perspective. That we've been working on different things. Certainly the workshops and the field trips that we ran for students. Upper left is Erin Sperling, one of our recent doctoral grads, running a vermicomposting workshop. We actually have a set of OISE worms that are currently with me off-site for the pandemic. We've also taken many groups from field trips, everything from the Humber River to work with Indigenous educators to lots of trips to Evergreen Brickworks over the years here in Toronto. But we've also got a small but mighty learning garden, OISE, the OISE Community Learning Garden. And we've also got now 14 environmental art installations that we've created with our students and other faculty and staff in the building over the years. When you walk our main stairwell, it's a bit of a ploy on our part to get people out of the elevators and walking the stairwells, which is good for personal well-being, but it's also good for energy conservation too, if we're not running those elevators as much. So we've been trying our best to really raise awareness around these issues in the building for sure. Now, Pam and I have talked just a little bit about some of our challenges, trying to better embed this work at OISE with our work with teacher candidates, but also trying to embed professional learning and offer it to a large number of eco-schools teachers at the boards. So we're interested in some of the challenges and barriers that you might have experienced in this work. I know many of you are actually very experienced at doing professional learning, whether that's with educators, with other forms of professionals. So can you pop either into the chat, or we'd actually love to hear your voices, so it's not just our voices in this session, about some of the challenges and barriers you've experienced in terms of professional learning in environmental and sustainability education.
I would love to chime in. It's a great question, and I think something that was mentioned yesterday in the research symposium has really stuck with me, and that was that I don't think that it's there's a value placed on in environmental sustainable education in from the College of Teachers, and so I think people always see, oh, it's just one more thing I have to do. It's an add-on. Whereas those of us who are immersed in teaching that way, for us, it's just a teaching strategy. It's not a subject. We can embed it in everything. So I think, I face this at the Faculty of Education where I work. It's just not seen as a priority. It's not given the time and seen as a priority.
Thanks for sharing, Judy.
I 100% agree with Judy. I've noticed even in the classrooms that I've worked in, I'm a pre-service teacher at the moment, and I see it's a lot of the times science is typically marginalized by literacy and math, and I think that's especially because of the mandatory province testing, but it keeps getting pushed kind of to the side and it's not taken as seriously. It's always, I find the subject that's, oh, well, we need an extra teacher for this class. Let's take the science teacher, and they could skip science for today. And I find that's really disappointing. And I know there was the same thing when I was in elementary school all those years ago, but to see it still continuing it's so disappointing.
Great. Thank you for adding to the conversation. So again, in the chat,
can I add? Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jen, please.
Well, years ago, there was this influential study by Lieberman and Huddy called Closing the Achievement Gap, which correlated integrating curriculum with an environmental context. And lo and behold, it led to an increase in standardized test scores. And in the United States and in Canada, actually globally, it was pretty influential. So here's what I suggest. We try and correlate those eco-schools teachers and potentially those mentor teachers and see if, when EQAO happens again, if grade 3 test scores are higher. It'd be really interesting. Do a Canadian study.
In TDSB, we actually have an incredible research department, and we did approach them. But right now, equity is the focus, and so it's very important that equity is there. But I wonder as well, because it would be easy to correlate the data with the EQA scores and the access or the participation in it. So
I think the argument can be made as well that Finland has some of the top scores on the planet, and they teach this way. This is what they do. So anyway, it's just one of those things on the back burner, maybe thinking future forward to have some sort of research in that department that I haven't seen since the Lieberman study.
Right. I know you're full in your master's, so who else needs a master's?
Exactly. Okay. I know it's a lofty idea, but
thank you so much, Jen.
I don't know if there's time for one more.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is that if you don't live it yourself, then it is hard to bring that forth to your students. So even if it's part of a teacher education program, you know, it is maybe seen as an extra, an add-on, or, you know, a judgment on how you live, and therefore it doesn't necessarily become part of what you embrace as a teacher. So and then of course that has the trickle down effect. So it really is about everyone. Yeah, definitely the modeling is important, but it is really about turning society and everyday citizens into you know, this army that we need to make a difference. So it's sometimes like, right here, we are the choir, and we need to get out there and convince people that it's important, convince other teachers that, you know, your kids actually really need to do this. So there's got to be some way. And I love the workshops and things that the teachers that, you know, you're showing those pictures, because that's going to help tune those people, those pre-service teachers, into things. And also practicing teachers. How do we get them, whereas when it's not made mandatory, or it's not, you know, it's an add-on to the curriculum? That these are all really big challenges.
Absolutely. And you know, all of you have really spoken from the heart, and thank you for adding that, but with a lot of wisdom and insight. We know that there are barriers. And so, Hilary, next slide. So back in 2007, how do you address those barriers? Again, TDSB looked outside and developed a partnership with Evergreen, who provided many of the resources to fund some summer institutes. And the very first one was in Jackman, which is East York area in Toronto. Near Jackman is a wealthy neighborhood, and so the parents had done quite a bit of work in the schoolyard with gardens and enriching it. And so it was a wonderful, rich experience to have the Summer Institute there. Based on that success, then Evergreen funded 5 more summer institutes because the auditors, and this is the feedback that we were getting, the independent auditors that were going into schools that had these summer institutes, participants found that there was change. And so from there, then Hilary got word, I'm not exactly quite sure of how it happened, but when the new OCT environmental studies, environmental science guidelines came out, Hilary approached our team, and together the Sustainability Office and OISE built or outlined what the new environmental curriculum AQ could look like, so that we would cover things like eco-schools, systems thinking, and as well address those leadership issues that Lauren had just mentioned. Like, how do we bring in people that didn't have that experience or felt uncomfortable teaching in the environment or about the environment or even for the environment? And so as to date, we've had about 172 TDSB teachers come through. A big part of that is through the Environmental Legacy Fund, where we're able to offer about a 60% discount to the OISE price. So it's a win-win. OISE gets the full money. We get the full teachers. And then we've had about 40 people complete their specialists, and some of those specialists are in the room today. So it's so exciting to see that legacy.
And Pam, I just want to add in for those who are from out of province that the OCT is the Ontario College of Teachers, and they are the organization that accredits teacher education programs. And they also run these things called AQ courses, which are quite individual to Ontario. AQ courses are additional qualification courses for teachers. They are the equivalent in the summer months anyways of 3 weeks worth of full-time learning. They're a significant commitment on the part of teachers, and they can be quite expensive. Teachers are just fantastic in this province. They take these AQ courses in droves, and they take them in everything from special ed and environmental education to all sorts of topics. So to have teachers sign up for environmental education as a summer, a 3-week summer, learning experience is really impressive. And we've been so lucky to work with such incredible champions in the TDSB in terms of their teachers who are so dedicated to doing this. And as Pam said, for the environmental ed specialists, they have to do this 3 times running. So it's 3 weeks times 3 to get your specialist qualification. That is, I'm going to say, pretty much the equivalent of doing like half of a master's degree. So it's really a huge commitment on the part of teachers. With that in mind, we'd like to know, as you're starting to learn a little bit about our early collaboration, and I'm going to talk about the research study in just a sec, but could you start thinking about who might you collaborate with? Who would be your dream partner? You can pop that in the chat. We won't put any names on it, so there's no long-standing record. But if if I had thought about this early on in this work, I would have thought that was a dream partner to be partnered with a major school board already doing the Eco Schools program. And certainly it was not, even though Pam and I have known each other for years, it was not anything that she and I, beyond the additional qualification courses in the summer institutes, ever really thought we could expand, to be fair. But one thing that laid the groundwork a little bit for that, while you're thinking about who your dream partner would be for collaboration, was a research study that she and I and Jane Forbes, who was one of my colleagues at OISE, partnered on, bringing together associate teachers. Those are Pam's teachers from the TDSB who accept our teacher candidates for practicum, and combining it with our teacher candidates who are keen on environmental ed. So doing some very purposeful partnering. And what we discovered was that that was a win-win on both sides. That our teacher candidates learned so much from seeing Eco Schools teachers model great practice in terms of environmental and sustainability education. But what we kind of expected to hear that from our teacher candidates. That wasn't a big shock. But what was a big shock for us in this research study was that the teachers felt that it was a really great experience for them as well. They felt that they had to dig a little deeper, work a little harder on the environmental education file, because they really wanted to impress those teacher candidates. So we had this really neat synergy that was happening between the associate teachers and the teacher candidates. And at that point, we did start just thinking and dreaming a little bit about how we might expand that work to really grow it and increase the collaboration. So this is what began in 2017. Now we have to give full credit for the idea for this to Pam's manager. His name is Richard Christie. He has been the leader in sustainability in the Toronto District School Board for, I think, well over 20 years now, right, Pam?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he started as a gentleman who was an outdoor education teacher to begin with. And
no, actually, Hilary, he started as a grade 2 teacher.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know about the step before that, but that he did become an outdoor ed teacher at that.
Absolutely.
Yes, which is not unlike Pam's path into this work as well. And then Richard, along with Eleanor Dudar and a number of other people at the school board, were the first architects of the Toronto District School Board's Eco Schools program. Why that's important to know is because the TDSB actually jump-started this program in Ontario. They ended up, after a number of years of having it running inside the board only, they spun it off to become Ontario Eco Schools, which went across the province. Last count, I think there was close to 2,000 schools in Ontario that were registered or certified Ontario Eco Schools. And just recently, Ontario Eco Schools has actually become Eco Schools Canada. And now they're offering this programming across the country. So really exciting that all of this came sort of from the kernel of the work that Richard did. But why I wanted to mention him was because he was the one who came to a meeting that we were all attending and said, hey, I've had this idea. What do you think? And he pitched the idea of, in fact, doing a full-scale collaboration together. So this began in 2017. It took a while to get into place. These are two large organizations, OISE and the TDSB. So the red tape can be a little thick at times. So Judy had mentioned earlier that there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest. And you're right, Judy, it's not sometimes easy to find these people. But when you're talking about money associated with collaborations, there's no doubt that certainly my manager's ears perked up on that one, no doubt. so getting some money associated with it can be one way to start a collaboration and bring that into an institution. I do want to just highlight before we move on, actually, some of the dream partnerships that people have popped into the chat. One person, Jennifer, says she loves collaborating with educators across Ontario, and I agree, Jen. That's some of my most rewarding work, is working with educators in classrooms on this in terms of their professional learning. And Haley talks about our org would love to work with universities offering B.Ed programs in Nova Scotia. So Haley, maybe we should have a chat about that. I might be able to connect you to some people who are doing work in that area in your part of Canada. And Gigi can think of some other academic institutions, U of Guelph, U of Waterloo, Ryerson, to do some work. And I agree, Gigi, we need to get the Ontario College of Teachers on board with this. I think that's our next challenge to be working on. So I'm completely in agreement with that. And Bruce Ford has put in a plug for doing partnerships with ECOM. And Bruce is a former chair of ECOM. You're absolutely right. And in fact, the group that I co-chair, it's a national group of teacher educators focused on ESE and teacher education, have partnered with ECOM, and we're starting to do some neat things together, including this conference, which is really great. So thanks for mentioning that, Bruce. So the partnership started as a 3-year partnership, and just this last fall, even during a pandemic, we were thrilled that the TDSB wanted to renew the partnership for another 3 years, so it will run for at least 6. There are lots of wonderful things that have done, but you're going to see that really what we did, we built on some of the stuff we were already doing at OISE, but the difference here is that we've integrated. We've integrated bringing together pre-service teachers or teacher candidates together with in-service teachers, and some really neat things have been happening as part of that. Certainly, you know, we've had an annual Eco Schools conference, which has grown every year. It got as big as the last one we had was not last fall because of the pandemic, but the year before was close to 400 people. And now this is actually our next one in the series. It was this ECOM conference. We partnered with ECOM, with TDSB Eco Schools Canada, the Natural Curiosity Project, and OISE, and now we're up to about 800 delegates. So we're really proud of that. We've got Eco Schools celebrations we do of the amazing work that teachers do in their classrooms. That's been a really important part, is to let teachers' voices shine through. Celebrate what they've been doing has been a really key point of what Pam and I have been working on together. Lots of events and workshops. The summer PD courses that Pam has talked about, we're now into our 8th year. Actually, the 8th year of the courses started this last Tuesday, which is a big week for us then. We've also got an Action Research PLC I'm going to tell you about in just one second. Research conferences, I mean, all sorts of really fun things that have been going on. And we could not have done this had we not come together, which is really, really exciting. I was going to talk a little bit about the benefits.
Yeah, when we think about the benefits, our staff, when I started, was about 9 full-time people. We are down to 3, and now that I have been seconded to the classroom for this year, they're down to 2. So if you could imagine the whole sustainability department in terms of the teacher support is 2 people. We couldn't do it without OISE. We could not do this conference, or we couldn't do anything. So just the sheer numbers is so important. Obviously, the higher profile, working with OISE brings us a depth of learning that we couldn't do with other nonprofits. Hilary is aware that Richard actually had been exploring working with some very strong nonprofits in the city that were offering teacher PD. But when we got talking, we talked about the depth of scholarship and the depth of knowing innovative practices in education was something our teachers needed. We couldn't just live with, the things that were going on at the time. We wanted to go deeper, and we wanted to make sure that whoever we partnered with would be able to carry such a large board in so many different ways. So that's been really important. Obviously, we've talked about the extra hands, volunteers. I've had teacher candidates. One of them's actually just joined us in the room. It has just been lovely. And so having those extra hands, both as volunteers and teacher candidates, to make the program work. In terms of the benefits for the OISE teacher candidates, again, I can't imagine if they have those passions, how delightful it is to be connected with someone who has the same passion and grow together in your education career together. So we've seen increased participation in environmental ed based on these collaborative in-services that have happened. In terms of challenges, Hilary and I...
Before we go on challenges, can we just cover, I popped the question into the chat about what benefits can you see?
Oh, of course, yes.
Collaboration bring to your organization. And we've had a couple of responses. Jesse says that loves the idea of nature-based educators working in external organizations like the Pine Project or Food Share. And we've worked with both of those groups, so I completely agree with you, Jesse, that these folks can model, connect to the local needs of the school community and schoolyard and urban offerings. Yeah, all of these are fantastic things. Connecting to principals and getting principals on board is another important piece of that as well. Judy talks a little bit about collaborating with the right organization can also raise the importance. And you're absolutely right about that, Judy, because when I brought this to OISE, that was one of the hooks, was like, what? The school board thinks this is important? When I give a rundown of what the school board had, what the TDSB had already done in this area, they were flabbergasted. They had, most of my senior managers had no clue what had been going on at the school board. So all of a sudden it became a bit more prestigious for them to get involved in this, right? Yeah.
Well, and just on that note, I think iron sharpens iron, if I could, quote from Faith book, but the idea that when your directors saw what we were doing, they bumped their game. But at the same time, when our directors saw what your group was doing, they also bumped their game.
Jen's also made the point that we need to get senior leadership organizations involved in this work as well. And, she mentioned the Council of Jen, I've forgotten code. Sorry, it's the directors of school boards in Ontario.
I've forgotten the exact acronym as well, which was why I just put directors of boards. Council of Ontario Directors of Education, I think, and Ontario Principals Council, OPC.
Yeah, and we have been doing some work, and this is one of the advantages. We've been doing some work with the Canadian Association of Deans of Ed, for example. They are in the process of writing a sustainability policy statement that all faculties of ed should be doing this work. We're being a little slow on it, frankly, but it's coming along. And you're right, we need leadership from those broad leadership organizations in order to bring about really wide scale systems change.
So as you can imagine, the challenges can be quite large, and yet it's it's kind of funny when we think about schedules. When your cohort was in the building, when your cohort was out in the building, when we would be doing report cards, when there'd be professional activity days. Obviously, these two large organizations do not collaborate when it comes to schedules, so we were always trying to figure that out. And we've made a couple mistakes, putting events on the night before report cards are due, and we were told, and so we got that feedback. I think the other challenge is Toronto is huge, and I learned from, again, our keynote today that it's true. Marginalized communities do not have the same kind of access to transportation. And so Scarborough in the East End is a very large cohort of teachers that wanted to participate, but to get downtown after school to participate was extremely difficult. We had investigated doing it in different schools, so just finding out those things. And of course, how can we not address things like the work action completely derail some programs? We still have our families and we're connecting, virtually, but the labor action, and then, just pandemic, just, small changes, small challenges. Pandemic, right? Oh my goodness, yes. So,
and I think for those people who popped their dream organizations or were thinking about them maybe in terms of professional collaborations, certainly trying to think a little bit in advance in terms of anticipating some of those challenges. And you can't always, we could never have predicted, Pam and I, work action or the pandemic. I don't think anybody could, but certainly, as best you can, thinking about the things that might slow you down or hold you back is a really good way to proceed with the work.
So in the chat again, what challenges do you anticipate? Or how have you been overcoming some of your challenges? I'll go quickly to the successes though. They were immediately visible when we had the auditors come back and do their reports. Every time they found a rich program in a school, for sure it connected to someone who had done the AQ or the summer institutes. So we got immediate feedback that these were working and enriching and deepening programs. We started seeing outdoor classrooms, full-day kindergarten spaces being used more actively, even before the pandemic, because people felt comfortable. And with that, we also got more support from principals And I just saw David Hawker-Badlowski join us. But that's been a huge piece too, is that the board has embraced the efforts to get the kids outside and seeing that as a wellness piece. I think the biggest takeaway has been the synergy, to build that dedicated group of community, and then to be able, when we have special events, to use the AQ alumni to, to test out or to pilot things, and then be the voices of critical, friends to give us the right feedback, but also to be the advocates of moving things forward.
Both Susan and Judy have popped some questions in the chat, and we're actually going to address both of these just coming up shortly, so we'll get there yet. I do want to highlight that I think one of the real advantages of the work that we've been doing is that we've been able to provide an opportunity to develop teachers' leadership in this area. And in fact, I'm really happy to introduce you to the Action Research professional learning community or team that we've been able to formulate together. This is made up of TDSB teachers and OISE educators who come together to do research. And this is a fantastic way. It's a form of practitioner research that really allows us to honor teachers' voices in this field. If you'd like to learn, by the way, we've got a whole session on Saturday just on the Action Research team alone. I'm happy that Gigi Shanks is with us in the room today too, who's a member of this team. We've been thrilled to be able to help teachers inquire into issues of concern to them and their students in their classrooms, and to really allow and put forward teachers' voices as part of the contributions that they make every single day to understanding educational practice when it comes to environmental sustainability ed. So it's really fantastic. We've been able to not only share what has been gained in terms of the knowledge through this research in schools, but also through conferences and workshops and courses and through publications. I'm happy that I think we've got something like 9 different members of the team presenting at this conference actually over the next few days, which is really wonderful. I also just want to make a point too that, we really are going full circle with this. Whereas in the past, these things might have been separate. You can see that in this Venn diagram, we've brought them together because they do overlap. So what we're discovering now is that our teacher candidates, when they graduate from our program, many of them, because the TDSB is one of the biggest boards, school boards in the city, go and join the TDSB, and they turn up as Pam's TDSB Eco Schools teachers. So they've already had a pretty good grounding, many of them. When they've left our program, they head into the Eco Schools program as part of the board. And then now what we're seeing is we're actually seeing the circle being completed. We've had half a dozen of them come back and actually start Masters in Education in the area of environmental and sustainability ed, which is so exciting. So this notion that we can continue through this partnership and this collaboration to continue to support teachers' professional learning needs as they grow through their careers is really exciting. And we love that we can use, teacher candidates to help teacher candidates. The teachers, Eco Schools help the teacher candidates. Vice versa, that happens. And then even in the graduate courses that I teach at OISE in environmental and sustainability ed, I have teachers come into those courses to continue to share their voices as well. So it really is a full circle and a very connected kind of model for teacher education. Now, we have used this as an opportunity for research as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want to point out that we've begun a 3-year mixed methods research study on the collaboration. We would have liked to have completed 3 years now, but this funny thing, the pandemic has kind of slowed us down a little bit and put a bit of a wrench into the works. But having said that, our main research question was really to investigate not only the learning needs and expectations and experiences of teacher candidates and Eco Schools teachers in this collaboration, but we've really been interested in the results and how sometimes the results don't always hold true from one year to another. So in terms of the learning needs and expectations, we found a lot of alignment, interestingly, between teachers and teacher candidates in terms of their desires, their needs and expectations for environmental and sustainability and professional learning, which was great. We like seeing that alignment, even though we did not bring them together for the research study. We've been working with them as separate groups, but bringing the data together, which has been really interesting. No doubt what we had expected, that pre-service teachers love learning from and being influenced by Eco Schools teachers, and that really helps them to solidify their sense of identity and their sense of self-efficacy early in their careers. in terms of being with like-minded educators. That's been really, really important. They love face-to-face experiential learning, so do teachers. Outdoors if possible, so do teachers. And integrated into the courses, except teachers would say they'd like to see it integrated into their day and they'd like release time for that, which is the ideal model, but very difficult to do because of the costs involved. But we found something that was quite curious in this first year of data, which was collected, to be fair, in 2018-19. And what we discovered is that they all said they prefer face-to-face learning, that they don't want to be learning online. And then the pandemic hit. So starting last spring, we sent out a quick survey. We collected some information about whether people would join online. The answer was, yep, they'd try it. And this is what's resulted. So this was something that's taken us completely by surprise. We discovered that teachers and teacher candidates actually really like learning online when there's nothing else on offer, to be fair. But even said that, they liked it enough that we've had huge numbers of them join over time. And I'm sorry, I forgot to put the totals on this slide. But we've discovered that, in fact, huge numbers. I think the number is up something that we're in 2,400 in the end of both teachers and teacher candidates who have joined us for these webinars. And we've offered over 30 of them in the last year. So it's been a very active year of webinars. We've got now a very active archive that people can access, which we didn't ever anticipate having at this stage. So sometimes these collaborations take a bit of a left turn when circumstances present themselves that way. And this addresses Judy's point that there's been some silver linings to working virtually. And you're absolutely right, Judy, there has been. This also addresses Susan's question earlier about how can we reach teachers in the geographic extremes of the GTA who can't make it down to OISE. And all of a sudden we discovered a way to do that. So I think what we can say moving forward is that we're going to have certainly some forms of in-person and hybrid and maybe some dedicated digital learning as well. So it's expanded our offerings, and certainly what we've seen just by tracking the numbers is it's absolutely expanded our reach in terms of this collaboration as well. I will point out, if you want some more information, as we're just coming towards the end of our presentation on this, we've got a Canadian Journal of Environmental Education article that came out in 2020, working with Elise Kennedy, who is our conference coordinator, but also a doctoral student at OISE. She and I have been working on the research study in terms of sharing the data. We've done our collection, by the way, for the second year of that research study, our data collection, but we have not, because we've been organizing this conference, had time to analyze it yet. That's one of our summer tasks for this year, and then to share that data. And we are going to postpone the third year collection of the data until we can come together again. There isn't a lot of research, by the way, in this field in terms of wide-scale professional collaborations between universities and school boards. There's lots of work that's being done in small ways. I know that Bruce and Patrick are in the room with us today, and I know that they've been experimenting with that in Vancouver, and maybe they can tell us about that in just a sec. But in terms of a wide-scale collaboration that involves these kinds of numbers, and it goes, I should point out, 12 months of the year. So we're doing this now every single month. It's quite an active undertaking, and we're just really pleased so far with how it's turned out. And once the pandemic is over, I think we'll be even more pleased how it works for the next series. Pam, do you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, in terms of the professional development, we did have a master's student, Janet Poffroth, do a look at effective professional development, and it really hits some of the things that we've mentioned before in terms of hands-on and experiential professional learning will never go away. Obviously, we're in a pandemic that's not going to happen, but I think when we get back, that blended version is something that really sticks out for us. And so we still obviously have more challenges. How do we build equity into our professional learning? How do we continue to reach out to organize or parts of the TDSB maybe that haven't caught the spark or maybe need more? And we'll continue to build on our focus groups, but also to continue to reach out and always evolve so that we are meeting the needs of both the TCs and the teachers, because I think together we can make the board incredibly a rich place of learning that is going to inspire generations to come.
And actually, I have to laugh that and smile, maybe more than laugh, that in the chat we've had one TDSB teacher and one teacher candidate who both said Yeah, that archive is great. We've been binging on it, one of them said, and the other one said it's been really helpful to catch up on webinars that were missed. So being able to record sessions has been really useful. And that's something we were not doing in face-to-face learning. So we'd love to hear from you for our last few minutes. If you have some professional learning examples that you've done, could you please put your microphone on and share that with us? We'd love to learn a little bit more about the work that you've been doing.
So just jumping on the webinar bandwagon, we've been through Learning for a Sustainable Future, we've been offering webinars too. And it's interesting, the numbers that you posted, we had a surge, an absolute surge in the fall. And we just started offering them in the fall. And I think that some of that has died down in that people are reaching fatigue in terms of attending and at the time of year. And now that we've gone back to online learning, I think people have been are a little bit less likely to join in. But still, we continue to offer them as you do, and I think that it's reaching an audience right across the country, which is great.
Judy, question for you. Hilary said often we get the gap between attendees that actually attend and registrants. And I'm now guilty of doing the same, registered, but then archive the webinar to save later. Do you find that's true for in your experience?
Yes, I do. I find that we are experiencing that as well. And for whatever reason, people are enthusiastic when they see the topic, they sign up. They can't always be there it certainly is bringing in more people than if we were face to face. But I think that, people do appreciate, I think, seeing them at their own leisure.
And
Great.
Bruce and Patrick, can you talk a little bit about the kind of collaborations you've been doing between the Vancouver School Board and UBC, other side of the country, and we'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Certainly. Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. And well, I'd start with thank you. You are doing remarkable work there, and it just what's resonating with me is the growing of roots and the building of relationships, the collaborative models you're playing with to bring people together. That's what we're really trying to do, and it sounds like you've been doing it for decades, or at least a number of years. And they say it takes a village to educate a child. It takes a community to grow a teacher and support them throughout their career. So we've been working with that. Around mentorship capacity, how do you connect post-secondary teacher candidates? And this is at UBC here in Vancouver. We have a cohort and a graduate program. So we're also playing with that. How do you connect graduate studies with Bachelor of Education work and undergraduate and all of the other kinds of professional learning that can happen in post-secondary with school districts and schools and school-based mentors and colleagues and administrators and all of the work that goes on in schools, and then triangulating that as much as we can with community partners. And I think Bruce can speak to that as our model really counts on those community partners to enrich the work that we do and to kind of build that circle. Any thoughts on that, Bruce?
Yeah, I echo the sentiments here 100%. I would also, I guess, from a partner perspective, gratitude to folks like Patrick and everybody in the ESCTE circle that that have been kind of paving the way to sort of just acknowledge that the work of teacher education goes beyond those that work for teacher education. It actually is comprised of the teacher champions that the teacher education offices rely upon, and then and the supporters in the school districts and on the edges of school districts, partners like the work Metro Vancouver is a regional district here in the Lower Mainland, and we work with SFU and UBC to support the teachers, the school districts, and the teacher education faculties. And so, I mean, just looping back to the initial question was around sort of where we've been making some inroads in this world of working online. There's been a lot of I guess raised eyebrows and kind of like pleasantly surprised folks about the power of working in the online interface. Like this new world has given us a chance to give working in the online environment a chance, where I think many of us defaulted to the mode that was kind of a second class type of teaching learning opportunity. And I think we've discovered that it has potential. In my world right now, we're beginning to receive some requests for next school year, where again, there's question marks around whether or not it'll be face-to-face. So the teacher champions that are asking for Pro-D are in fact really curious if we can commit to doing something in either space, or maybe the hybrid. And so when I'm able to say, yes, we can meet you where you're at or where you need to be, or where, Dr. Bonnie Henry says we have to be doing that work, they say, okay, we'll sign us up. It's pretty cool to be able to not, I guess, have people lose interest. There's a few people who are saying, we want you if we can do face-to-face, or in some that are saying, no, we need the virtual. So yeah, just wanted to reinforce that this is kind of a cool time to not lose sight of working in both capacities as we move forward. And just thanks again to the leadership in the circle for blurring the lines between who's responsible, or for the sort of who's responsible for making this good work happen, and for extending ownership for making that good work happen outside of the conventional norms. So,
well, and can I actually, Bruce, can I call on Jen Barron now to actually talk about how she's blurring the lines as well? She's blurring the lines in terms of she's got a fantastic website, which is Eco Inquiry, and I think it's .ca, Jen, if I remember. And she's now sharing her expertise as a teacher more broadly, and she's getting huge numbers of teachers. So Jen, can you just talk about that just a little bit as a form of way of you sharing your expertise with other teachers in that capacity?
Sure. So just traditionally, I've been with York Region District School Board for 26 years as a classroom teacher, and had a little secondment at York University to bring in environmental ed in 2009 to 2012. And I've taught at outdoor ed centers for my board, and written AQs for Nipissing University, York University, and now I'm with the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario teaching environmental ed AQs. But it didn't satisfy my passion. I wanted to go a little bit further. So I realized that with the potential for online learning, and that I could take that traditional mode and create a website that integrated the virtual piece through choice boards, the kind of Bitmoji choice board bandwagon that I jumped on really early, and connected that to some traditional games and interactive activity that people could do in their own schoolyards. And the reception has been incredible. I mean, I just checked my stats, and in 9 months, I've had 50,000 viewers from 90 countries, every continent except Antarctica. And so when I say that, this professional network now, and I took a word that I hope, I did some research, so equal inquiry, that I hadn't seen used across the intranet, and bought the domain name, and then worked with it in Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then I get analytics for all of that, which I love. The data geek in me loves all the analytics. And it really, I am actually blown away by the audience that I'm reaching. I am committed to doing all of it for free. I have a career in teaching. I have a job as an AQ instructor. So, I'm gainfully employed. But so it's my way of giving back during the pandemic to educators, to environmental education, and to the planet. And it's been a fascinating journey. I've really enjoyed it. So anyway, thank you for that opportunity to chat about it, Hilary. I still really love all of the kind of professional learning that we've talked about, but and that you've talked about. I found I needed something even a little bit more, and something that really has been a passion project as well.
Oh, thank you so much Jennifer. Jen, it's just been great that you have added and enriched the online environment in such a great way. I am going to wrap up our session just to honor the time. We are 1 minute over, for goodness sakes. I'm sure we could go for 30 minutes more. Thank you again for spending the time with us today, spending Earth Day with us, bringing your wisdom into the room. I love Margaret Wheatley. We are wise together. And I hope that this has inspired you to find those partnerships that will really enrich your practice, because we truly do need each other. We are better together, and better is possible, more is possible. So thank you again for joining us, and a big thanks to Hilary. I don't know if you know our partnership, but she does all the work. I just look pretty. Actually, no, she looks pretty. She does all the work. I am the sidekick here. So we just want to.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's a pretty even Steven partnership. And thank you all for attending today.
So thanks again.